Good afternoon. Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to this afternoon's lecture. We're looking at performance appraisal, performance management and appraisal. Okay. Okay, so we're looking at performance management and appraisal. So the main objectives are as follows. We're going to define what performance management is, and then we're going to discuss how it differs from performance appraisal. And then we're going to describe the appraisal process, and then we set effective performance appraisal standards. We're going to develop and evaluate, and administer at least 4 performance appraisal tools, and then we'll explain and illustrate the problems to avoid in appraising performance. Then we're going to discuss the pros and cons of using different raters to appraise a person's performance, and then we're going to perform an effective appraisal interview. Okay, so define performance management and discuss how it differs from performance appraisal. So what basic concepts in performance appraisal management and performance management and appraisal? The performance appraisal process, and then we're going to look at the reasons why there's need for appraisal performance. Then we'll look at the importance of continuous feedback, and then performance management. Okay, so basically performance management has to do with creating an organizational system that is fair, effective, and widely understood by all. The goal of the performance management is to support the strategic aims of a firm or an organization by establishing a valid and reliable process connecting the employees to it. So there are 3 aspects that actually come with performance appraisal. These include setting the work standards and then assessing actual performance relative to those standards, and then providing feedback to the employee. So the performance appraisal system actually has to do with the continuous feedback and how we manage performance in an organization, how performance is managed in an organization. So effective appraisals begin before the actual appraisal. First, a manager defines the employee's job and the performance criteria. Then they define what the job means to make sure that the subordinate is able to agree with his or her duties and the job standards on the appraisal method that is to be used. So appraising performance is important for several reasons. To start with, many employees may still base pay and promotions on employee appraisal. Appraisals play an integral role in the employer's performance management process. The appraisal lets the boss and the subordinates develop a plan for correcting any deficiencies while reinforcing those things the employee does correctly. Appraisals are useful, a useful career planning tool. And then appraisals also play a role in identifying training and development needs. Actually, that's supposed to be our next topic. If you don't understand that we're looking at. So there's we move on to setting effective performance appraisal standards. How do you come up with this? So most employees need to and expect to know ahead of time on what basis the employer will appraise them. What are they going to be judged on? What criteria of the work input should be emphasized for them to be able to reach the next goal and for them to be considered to be effectively performing their duties. So we have employees' goals and performance standards. So human resource in practice, how do you set effective goals? One, you're supposed to assign specific goals for the employees. And then you're also supposed to assign measurable goals and assign challenging but doable goals. And then you're also supposed to encourage participation. Employees should be able to participate in the work environment. They should be able to give in their input amicably by the standards that are set forth before them. So basing appraisal standards on required competencies, the role of the job description. So competencies are often arranged according to the basic technical, motor, intellectual, and other skills needed to be successful in a job. So in addition, the minimal level of each skill needed should be specified. Ideally, what to appraise and how to appraise it will be obvious from the job description. So usually the job description already stipulates what is expected of the employee from the employer. So the job description is able to list the job duties and tasks, and then also how critical each of the job description or activities are and how it should be performed. Then who should do the appraising? We have what is termed as peer appraisals, and then we have rating committees, and then self-ratings, and then appraisal by subordinates, and then the 360-degree feedback. So basically, competencies are often arranged according to the basic technical, motor, and intellectual and other skills needed to perform a successful job. So in addition, the minimal level of each skill needed should be specified. So ideally, what to appraise and how to appraise it. Okay, so that's on the actual standards that are set forth. But then now we're looking at who should do the appraising. So we have the aspect of peer appraisals. So peer appraisals involve people in the organization that are at the same level and appraising each other. For example, you are in the same department and occupy probably the same position, and then your friend is able, your colleague in the same work positioning is able to actually able to put an input and say, okay, my friend has these strengths and whatnot. So that is how peer review works. So it's a bit more, not really like a person, you're able to perform and your colleague is able to actually grade you according to your strengths. So these are actually becoming more popular in organizations, especially those that are self-managing. The other aspect is that of rating committees. Rating committees consist of multiple raters, typically the employee's immediate supervisor and 3 or 4 other supervisors. And then self-ratings tend to be higher. There's also the aspect of self-ratings, which appear to be higher than the supervisor or peer ratings, although input from the subordinate is always to be encouraged. We have appraisal by subordinates, those that are below your positioning. So appraisal by subordinates are also known as upward feedback. In this instance, subordinates anonymously rate their supervisor's performance. For example, if you're a lecturer at the college or university, you get, sometimes certain universities have these forms that they distribute to pupils or to their students to be able to actually give grading on what they think their supervisor's capability is. So in a way, if you're looking or for example, in a university setting, you can be the HOD, and then you get to have these forms that are distributed to the people that you are spearheading. And those people actually get to grade you. And those are your subordinates because you are above them in terms of superiority, in terms of execution of duty. So those are some of the aspects that come out actually. Okay, so you have techniques of, we move on to techniques of, we have 360-degree feedback, which has become more widely used, and then ratings are collected from the employees, supervisors, subordinates, peers, and occasionally internal and external customers. So the best advice is that organizations should carefully assess costs, train those giving feedback thoroughly, and should not rely solely on 360-degree feedback. So we move into the techniques of appraising performance. We have what is called graphic rating scale method, which is a method which is simplistic and most popular performance appraisal technique. The scale is used to list a number of traits and a range of performance for each. Each of the employee is rated by identifying the score that best describes his or her performance level on that trait. So for example, you have maybe a person exhibiting high, okay, let me just put something. Okay, sorry, I was trying to write down something. Okay, so for example, you get to have a technique which actually brings out this performance trait, which is a strong leadership trait. Like for example, you're able to actually lead your team amicably as a leader. You're able to guide them in the right direction, and you're able to actually have them follow you. So you find that if you exhibit this kind of a trait, and then the people rating you are able to actually give a high score because you rate so highly on this trait, this quality actually. So managers are able to decide which job performance aspect they should measure. So depending on the job placement that a person has, that is where this placement is able to come out. And then you have such aspects include generic dimensions, actual job duties, but like the actual thing that a person is supposed to perform. So all that comes out. And then also the behavioral recognizable competences, like something that is actually in the way you display yourself, and in terms of also how you're able to make perform your duties the same. Okay, so let me just run through so that we can at least wind up. Okay, so we have effective goals, competences, job descriptions, appraisals. Okay, so we develop and evaluate, administer at least 4 performance appraisal tools. So which are these 4 tools? We have alternative ranking, which requires employees from best to worst on a specific trait, and also choosing the highest, the lowest, until all are ranked. So you like category setup, you try to ascertain the traits that uh, this particular placement of a job is supposed to have, and then you have people, uh, what's this, rating them. So it could be like from the highest to the lowest, like say, okay, how good is your display and your relation with other colleagues? How do you relate at that level? How do you communicate? How are you able to make that trait go by? How are your interactive skills when it comes to your colleagues? So you look at such aspects, and then you have paired comparison method, which involves rating employees by making a chart of all the possible pairs of employees for each trait. The manager then indicates that one is a better employee of the pair. So there's that aspect where they pair up and they see which one fares better in that particular trait to the other when you make the comparison of the same employees that are being graded. Then you have forced distribution, which is a method which is predetermined with percentages of employees rating that are placed in various performance categories, similar to the gradient over curve. And then you have a critical incident, which actually has to do with the supervisor keeping a record of uncommonly good or undesirable examples of an employee's work-related behavior. And then the supervisor then reviews the record with the employee at predetermined times. Then we have a narrative form, which actually is a method which involves rating the employee's performance for each performance factor needed on the job. And then the written examples and an improvement plan is provided as well in this aspect. And then you have this process then aids the employee in understanding whether his or her performance was good or bad, focusing on the problem solving. So then we have what is called the behaviorally anchored rating scales. This method involves a combination of benefits and of narratives, critical incidents, and quantified scales. It does so by anchoring a scale with specific behavioral examples of good or bad performance. The advantages of these behavioral anchored scales uh, include the following: accuracy, clear standards, feedback, intended dimensions, and consistency. Okay, so those are the performance appraisal tools that we mentioned. Then the others include mixed standard scales, management by objectives, and then computerized and web-based performance appraisal, electronic performance. You can read through this so that we can cut down on time. So explain and illustrate the problems to avoid in appraising proposal. So we have potential appraisal problems. These are unclear standards, the halo effect. So the unclear standards include ambiguous traits, degrees of merit that can result in an unfair appraisal, and then also in terms of the halo effect, you have the influence of a rater's general impression on ratings of specific qualities. That is what it means like. And then you have the central tendency, which has to do with the supervisors stick to the middle of the rating scales, hence rating everyone as average. And then you have leniency or strictness, which has to do with supervisors having a tendency to rate everyone either low or high. And then we have recency effects. These are letting what employees has done recently, bind the manager to the employee's performance over the entire year. Bias is a tendency to actually allow an individual to differentiate in certain aspects such as age, race, sex, the effect of appraisal ratings, that is. So what are the pros and cons of using different raters to appraise a person's performance? So guidelines for effective appraisals. You have to know what problems an institution is faced with, And then other than knowing the problems, you also have to use the right tool, know which tool applies for a specific job placement and for a particular individual. And then also looking at keeping a diary, meaning you're keeping account of everything that takes place on a day-to-day basis, so for you to be able to be guided in an appropriate manner. And then get an agreement on a plan. Make sure you know which direction you're moving in, and then ensure fairness. Make sure all the biasness that surrounds the person's placement or even their character is done away with, so that you make sure you grade a person in the right way that you need to. And then there's also the appraisal and the law. Also make sure that whatever you're doing is in confinement with the law, the employment law, labor laws, the what is the highest law of the land. Say in Zambia and SETA, if you look at the Zambian constitution, whatever decision you make in terms of whatever appraising aspects you're using, they should be in confinement with what the law stipulates. And then we have performance, how to perform an effective appraisal interview. Okay. So you start with the types of appraisal interviews. How do you conduct an appraisal interview? You use objective data, meaning data which is reliable, data which is leading someone which is guiding. And then don't also get personal. Make sure you're as liberal and as objective as you can be. You're just fair. You don't use any biasness towards this particular employee that you're about to appraise. And then you also infuse an encouragement. Make sure that the employee can do better and actually put more input in the organization. And then there's an aspect of agreement. So there's also an aspect of trying to handle a defensive subordinate. Every time, if you're doing an appraisal, a person would always come out defensive, especially if you bring out negative traits towards negative traits that are exhibited by this particular individual. And then also try on looking at the aspect of criticizing a subordinate, try to know how you can manage that and not come out in a wrong way that will actually deter the whole process. And then also formal writing mourning, and then there's also the realistic appraisal aspect. So on in performance management, there's the aspect of performance management, rating the performance management versus the appraisal. And then there's also the aspect of using information technology and talent management, then appraisal and active management, and segmenting employees. So we have what it stands as direction sharing and goal alignment and ongoing performance monitoring, ongoing feedback, coaching and developmental recognition and rewards. And okay. So basically, when managing an appraisal interview, you have a general appraisal management. You have to make sure that you have all the processes that are needed in place and make sure that you follow through the guidelines that will ensure that your appraisal system is effective. Because the appraisal system is very important. It actually determines the career path of a particular employee. It will actually build or actually deter them in the organization or even future placements. So it's very important that as human resource personnel, we are able to actually identify amicably the way to get through uh, to these appraisal systems so that it's done in an amicable manner. Okay, thank you so much for